Which injury is very dangerous, like this is side threatening? Which injury? Acid or alkali? Alkali. Tell me the three features of this alkali. How does it act? Mechanism of action. Alkali. Don't see in these books. Two, three features important. How it differs with the acid injury? Acid causes what? You are not going through. Acid combines with the proteins, the cells, and that make it coagulum type. That is a barrier. While this alkali is saponifies the fatty acids, they are dissolved on the membrane. And it causes the or this fiber part and that proteolytic enzymes. It causes further penetration, and that is hygroscopic in nature. It pulls out all the fluid. That is why it's more dangerous. Once alkali is there, so 2 3 feet goes and vicious cycle is for proteolytic enzymes going on, give the injuries to that part and destruction. Lastly, the atrophic or degeneration of complete eye. That is the mechanism of action. Treatment part, you know that all this wash and antibiotic drops, steroids. Okay. Now I am taking this sympathetic ophthalmia. As the name indicates, this is a sympathetic disease with the sympathy. Usually this is asked in the examination, theory part. So be careful. During these heads, we will discuss the definition, epidemiology, theories, and clinical manifestation, symptoms, examination, complication, pathology, all. These are the heads we are going to discuss about. First of all, the definition that, because we can ask you, what is sympathetic ophthalmia? Sympathetic ophthalmia is defined as a bilateral granulomatous panuveitis that occurs after the uvea of one eye is subjected to a penetrating injury due to either the accidental trauma or surgery. A larger one definition, but 2 3 features are there. There must be a ocular injury to the uvea. Either this is accidental injury or many times during the or after surgery also. Now this is the bilateral granulomatous panuveitis. Terminology, you can see that bilateral, both sides. Granulomatous. What do you mean by granulomatous? Because we have discussed the iridocyclitis, no? At that time we discussed granulomatous and non-granulomatous uveitis. Tell me what is granulomatous uveitis, so that we can differ with the non-granulomatous. 3 4 features are. They form the tubercle-like structure. Granuloma like that. That is why granuloma. Mutton fat capes. This is insidious onset that. Thick synechias are there. This is chronic disease, and non-granulomatous is an acute disease. Too much aqueous flare. Why in granulomatous less? Capes are there, mutton fat. There are fine capes, here the mutton fat cape. Synechia maybe, but here the thick tenacious synechia are there. That is what the granulomatous uveitis. Granulomatous is generally infective part. In which disease is granulomatous uveitis occurs? 2 3 diseases are very common. Yes, sarcoidosis, one. Tuberculosis, syphilis, that is, these are some. While the infective or non-granulomata, they are spondylitis, ankylosing spondylitis, allergic or the arthritis or uveitis, that causes this. That is a acute stage. So this granulomatous panuveitis. On the one, the granuloma is formed. We can see how what the granuloma, Dehlen-Fuchs nodules are formed. These are just like granulomas. And panuveitis. What is this terminology? We have seen in the classification anterior uveitis, intermediate uveitis, and posterior uveitis, anterior when anterior part is involved, intermediate when vitreous or the pars plana side is involved, posterior when the choroidal retina is involved. What is this pan? Whole of the eye is involved, anterior, posterior and immediate, intermediate. That is pan uveitis. Means from anterior to posterior side, every part, where every anatomical structures are involved. So here there are three things in the sympathetic ophthalmitis. One, there must be injury to the uvea. A dangerous state, the ciliary body is there. One. Second, granulomatous uveitis. Granulomas are four. And third, the pan uveitis. These are the three features of the sympathetic ophthalmitis. Epidemic incidence prior to 950 is what 2% when there is atomic blast and there is cochlear injuries and wars were there. A retrospective of 0.2 to 0.5%, and this is the prospective study 0.03 to 1 lakh or more than that. I have never seen a case of sympathetic ophthalmitis in my life. I have read only. It's very rare nowadays because the treatment of the part, that is the ormaticular surgery, and that is the fine, that is the incidence is very, very low. I have not seen in my life in 25 or 30 years of the ophthalmic this feature. So that epidemiology, it is reducing. There is no racial disposition, all ages is involved. Prevalence difficult to measure because it has always been a relatively rare disease. Very rare. But we are afraid of this. Once there is an injury in the dangerous area, we think of that also. Yes, this is a table. This is a changing trend in ophthalmitis, sympathetic ophthalmitis. Very, very important one. Cause is first we are taking that. Historical, it was a post-trauma, a dangerous area, ciliary body, and the post-surgery also. But a rare cases post-surgical also occurs. Surgery means where the uveal tissue or iris tissue we are handling that. Especially the pars plana or the vitrectomy or the vitreous surgery or the trabeculectomy, or there is any injury part of that, trabeculectomy or that, or iridectomy. Because there is a uveal tissue, we are touching the uveal tissue, and melanin pigment they are liberate and they are acting as an antigen. It is thought that is the one cause of the post trauma. It can be after surgery also, very rarely. Patient, males and children know this difference of the male. Incidence considered disappearing 30 years ago. Consider that this is disappearing and probably increasing. This one underdiagnosed. This is underdiagnosed because nobody has diagnosed. But some people rarely they have diagnosed also. Onset is 65% within 2 to 8 weeks, means 2 months 65%, and 95% in 1 year. So it can occur indeed 4 to 8 weeks to 1 year also. It was recorded after the 30 or 40 years also previously that, but it is rarely part. Presentation, granulomatous pan uveitis and any clinical uveitis on our historical tissue. Inciting eyes, enucleation within 2 weeks, trauma for prevention of. It was thought that if you enucleate the inciting eye, it will stop that in the other eye. But if meticulous injury is not, nowadays no enucleation people are doing. Visual prognosis is very poor once that occurs, and reasonably due to modern immunosuppression. But nowadays meticulous repair, meticulous treatment, this is all this immunosuppressive drugs and the steroids, this is reasonably prognosis is better, that thing reasonably increase, good increase in that. That is important, so we can compare this. Theories regard, because once this comes, so we can ask you what is the etiopathogenesis, why it occurs. It is long been thought that uveal pigment is somehow released by trauma and incite an inflammatory reaction. This is the widely accepted theory. Suppose the injury toward it is a gunshot or what is the trauma or the dangerous area is ciliary body is a part. When the injury occurs, the uveal pigment comes out. So they causes an inflammatory reaction That is the important part. This is the important theory. Neurogenic extension from one eye to other through the optic nerve. It is thought that, but no evidence of this one. Infective theory, tuberculosis, actinomyces, rickettsia. This is also they are thinking that it can be infective also. Combined ciliary nerve in the bacterial theory or the infective theory. Allergic or anaphylactic theory. Autoimmunity against the uveal melanocytes and the retinal pigments epithelium or the retinal antigens. That see mostly widely same thing, that once the trauma occurs, uveal tissue pigmentation comes out, they act as the antigen, the antigen antibody reaction comes or the immunological reaction, and sympathetic ophthalmitis that develops. So widely accepted, act as the antigen part uveal pigmentation. The role of ocular immune privilege also depending upon the eye, how your eye is immune to that. What is the immunological theory? Role of ocular immune privilege. Not all cases of the injury progress. They think that injury part, but not the all injury are not going to give this. Ocular immune privilege has a role to play. Suppose I have immune system better than, so I will not develop that. Anybody, that depends on varies over. All immunosuppressive microenvironments, evolutionary protective mechanism towards any process that enters the division. So means role of ocular immune system also take parts. This is important by clinical manifestations, how we diagnose that. The interval between the ocular injury and the onset of the sympathetic ophthalmia has been reported to be as short as 5 days. It is reported. So once the injury occurs in the one eye, within 5 days, other eye includes. It is reported that. That is in 5 days, very rarely that. 5 days or as long as 60 or 60 years. So there is no definite this incubation period of the injury. It can be occurring after the days also, or after the months, or after the years also. In general, 65% of the sympathetic ophthalmia cases occur 2 to 2 months in between. This is the area where 65% people they can occur. This is 65. This is within 2 months, and the after injury, and 90% occurs before 1 year. So 65 months, 2 months, 95 or 90 or 95, that is in the 1 year, before 1 year. So that you take the period 2 months to 1 year, patient can develop. Chances are 90% once the injury is there. That is a clinical manifestation. Now the clinical manifestation, the traumatized eye in sympathetic ophthalmitis, either from an accidental penetrating injury or intraocular surgery. Two things, either the trauma or the ocular surgery, especially vitreoretinal or the uveal tissue increases that. Characteristically exhibits a persistent granulomatous inflammatory reaction. That's the same thing which we discussed that. Symptoms, important part of the symptoms. Earlier symptoms may be decreased accommodation, and the earlier sign retrolenticular flare and cells in the fellow eye. Once the injury is there, the fellow eye response due to the anterior activity, aqueous flare and accommodation is decreased, or ciliary tenderness occurs. This is the earliest sign. Suppose any ocular injury occurs before 2 months or 3 months or like that, that eye is okay, means that is having uveitis. But in the other eye, if the patient complains blurring of the vision, means low accommodation, that flare, if that occurs, you must think of the sympathetic ophthalmia. So ciliary tenderness, blurring of the vision, aqueous flare, these are the earliest sign of this one. That is, maybe flare may be in the antechamber or intermediate uveitis or vitreous part, or cells also. Irritable red eye with or without decreased vision. So decreased vision can be there, because when the aqueous flare comes, that causes the hindrance of the visual acuity decrease. Other symptoms include photophobia and transient hyperopia. What is hyperopia? In the beginning, I said loss of accommodation, or accommodation is decreased. Might be pupil dilated to the ciliary body, that is no accommodation there. That causes accommodation or cycloplegia. This is the cycloplegia part. It causes the hypermetropia. Why the ciliary spasm, that causes myopia. That is why can be blurring vision or the hyperopia, that is hypermetropia. Cutaneous and neurological changes, they can be occur also. Alopecia, scoliosis, vitiligo, dysarthria, tinnitus, vertigo, and the cells in the cerebrospinal fluid, which are classically associated with the Vox-Koenigsee-Heredas syndrome, is rarely accompanied the sympathetic ophthalmitis. This VKH syndrome, Vox-Koenigsee-Heredas disease, it involves the CNS also plus granulomatous uveitis. These are some features, but after that, this VKH syndrome, there are alopecia, scoliosis, vitiligo, means central nervous system is also involved. Why ill sympathetic ophthalmitis clear cut? These symptoms are not there. So we have to diagnose. This is the important part of the VKH syndrome, Heredas disease. That is also idiopathic in nature pathology, and the same symptoms, granulomatous uveitis, panuveitis, that is the symptoms are there. We have to differentiate this. In rare cases, in sympathetic ophthalmitis, it can be occurred. Alopecia, or scoliosis or vitiligo on that part. Maybe rarely accompany this. So this is a very rare in sympathetic ophthalmitis. On examination, we have to see the slit lamp examination. That is the important part. Bilateral granulomatous uveitis. There are the symptoms of the granulomatous uveitis. Mutton fat capes precipitate. You know what is mutton fat? They are larger and the greasy color. They are adherent to the, where these are seen? Conjunctiva on the lens. Yes, important. This is the posterior part of the cornea, that is endothelium, mutton fat capes, larger part, that is there. Cells and flare in the antechamber, same thing of the features of the uveitis, and vitreous cells also. Isolated or confluent patches of the yellow-white choroid infiltrates. If you see the fundus, there will be Daniel Fuchs nodule. These are, I'll show you that later on. If undetected, eventually progresses to the panuveitis with exudative retinal detachment. Detachment is covered to you. Retina part is over. Yes. So you might have had this detachment. There are two types. Solid detachment, rhegmatogenous and non-rhegmatogenous. So this is the exudative detachment. Exudative means exudate there, just like granuloma and elevated part. There is no hollow part this time. That is exudative disease. Any tumors are like that, or the pregnancy, hypertensive, that is there. These are the features of granulomatous uveitis. So the important aqueous flare, the cells and the mutton fat capes, and posteriorly there are choroid can be involved, that Daniel Fuchs nodule, and the panuveitis part, as I explained before that. These are on examination are features of this one. This is the Daniel Fuchs nodule. We talk about the granulomatous uveitis, the posterior choroiditis, that although not pathognomic, quite suggestive of sympathetic ophthalmitis, and may indicate a more severe stage of the sympathetic ophthalmitis. These nodules are called Daniel Fuchs nodules. Small, discrete, yellowish infiltrate at the level of the retinal pigment epithelium. These are the important part, yellowish, discrete at the level of the retinal pigment epithelium. So these are Daniel Fuchs nodules, pathognomic features. These are the nodules. Do you remember what are the other nodules also in the granulomatous uveitis? Or tubercles? What are those? In tuberculosis and syphilis, the nodules are there. Basaka's nodules, Kappa's nodules, they are also occurring in the granulomatous uveitis. And this nodule, remember, this is third part, Daniel Fuchs nodule, that is seen in the choroid part of the yellowish, discrete, small part yellowish in the pigment epithelium or in the choroid part. That is pathognomic feature of this. So Daniel Fuchs nodule, if you examine the retina. Then comes the complication. What complication? All complications which we have read of the uveitis of that is going to occur. Extensive anterior and the posterior synechias, pupillary membrane formation, But suppose there is a exudative membrane in the pupillary area of the uveitis. What will you call it? Occlusive pupillae, or what is occlusive pupillae? And the exudative membranes that comes at the pupillary area, that is deposited, or exudates are deposited in front of the lens, that is exudate, or occlusive pupillae, that is called. Seclusive pupillae, when the pupillary with this iris bound, this border that is attached, or synechiae all around, then the iris bombae occurs. So these are some features of this part that we have to remember this. So that is a occlusive pupillae, or the membrane formation, pupillary membrane, that is. Rubeosis, glaucoma, cataract, papillitis, optic atrophy, exudative retinal detachment, chorioretinitis, scarring, and choroidal neovascularization, and lastly the phthisis part. These all complications we have read when we read the complication sequelae of the uveitis. Everything is there. That is the pupillary membrane, the exudative, cataract, and the glaucoma, or the pupillary atrophy, or optic neuritis, or the detachment, the neovascularization, and lastly the phthisis bulbi. Why? Anybody can do why this phthisis bulbi occurs in the last stage? What is phthisis? Which eye you will call phthisis? There are two terms: atrophic eye one, another is the phthysical eye. Atrophy, when there is atrophy is going on, structures are seen or we can identify, but tension is very low, there is no vision, or small eye, that is atrophic eye. But phthysical eye, that going to disintegrate. All see, you cannot identify the aqueous part, muscle part, that is the atrophic eye. AC is almost lost, that is phthysical. Tension is zero or high. Why the tension becomes zero in phthysical eye? Which structures maintain the pressure, intraocular pressure of the eye? Which structure? Which? That is the ciliary body. Because ciliary body that secretes the aqueous in the posterior chamber. From the posterior chamber it comes the anterior chamber, and it goes through the trabecular meshwork and the systemic circulation. That is how the pressure is maintained. Suppose there is a degeneration of the ciliary body, which we are going to occur in cyclodialysis or cyclodithermy, ciliary body atrophy. If the ciliary body is degenerated, the atrophy of that ciliary body, it stops secretion of the aqueous. So there will be no aqueous, so eye will become soft, slowly and slowly soft, that will disintegrate. That eye is phthysical eye. When the patient comes, hardly we can identify, there is only the yellow buttons are there, cornea is hardly seen, structures are not seen, quadrangular structures are seen, that we will call this is phthysical eye. That is how we can diagnose that. Initial stage is optic, this is atrophic eye also, where we can identify the all structures. That is the phthysical. Last stage is the phthysical, as we have read in acute iridocyclitis also. The pathology part. The inflammatory changes in the exciting eye and the sympathizing eye are the same. Features in the inciting eye and the sympathetic eye are aqueous flare, the cells, and everything. Except for the features of the trauma and the exciting. That will be mark of trauma in the exciting eye. So one is the inciting eye where the trauma is there, so trauma mark, or sympathetic eye, that is the all features, all structures are involved there. Granulomatous uveitis, this is the diffuse lymphocytic infiltration, the uveal tract, epithelioid cells and nest, pigment phagocytosis by the epithelioid cells, absence of the necrosis and sparing of the retina and the choriocapillaries by the granulomatous process. This is the granuloma form, lymphocytic infiltration, epithelioid cell, giant cell, they all are aggregated and they form the tubercles and the Dehlen-Fuchs nodules. That is the pathological part of it. So that once the structure, immunological structure or cell, lymphocytic infiltration, epithelioid cell, they are pigments are engulfing the pigment and making a granules like structure that we have seen there. That is the pathological part of this. You can see here This lymphocytic this infiltration epithelioid cells. Again, the pathology uveal tract usually diffusely thickened massively by infiltration of the lymphocyte and with various numbers of the NASH of the epithelial cells displaying the pigment phagocytosis are present. All things are there. That is the choroidal structures are seen. This is the Dienl-Fuchs nodule. That is you can see that this is the structure of the all lymphocytic infiltration epithelioid cells on this. Atypical pathological features. Because typical part, all uveitis part is there. This is atypical features. Focal non-granulomatous to diffuse non-necrotizing granulomatous. Many times it can give the acute reaction. So that can be non-granulomatous in rare cases of that. Focal choriocapillaries involved. Where we have seen that retina and choriocapillaries are not involved, here in atypical part. Choroidal adhesions, retinal detachment, optic atrophy, retinal perivasculitis, mild inflammatory involvement of the meninges, preferentially anterior segment of the. These are some rare part of this one, atypical part of the sympathetic ophthalmitis. Again, see multiple. This is a hyperfrontal nodules part. That is the. This is the fluorescent angiography. This is a leakage of the dye in the tubercular part. Again, you can see the hyperfluorescent part of this is the disc. That is the disc edema is also many times papilledema is also seen. Then comes the differential diagnosis. So that is the pathological part. If the question comes, so you have to explain also what is the pathology, lymphocytic infiltration, epithelioid cell. They are aggregated and forming the Dienl-Fuchs nodule-like structure. There is no need to make this diagram formation all structure, but you have to explain that. These are the Dienl-Fuchs nodules. Dienl-Fuchs nodules are this yellow discrete that is over the pigment epithelium part. That is structure you can make. The differential diagnosis, mainly the Vox-Koenige-Heraday disease. That is, we have seen that phacoanaphylactic uveitis, sarcoidosis, sarcoid because the granules or tubercles are formed. Chronic idiopathic uveitis where the diagnosis is not there. Other granulomatous uveitis induced by mycobacteria or fungi. So whatever the granuloma or tubercles is formed, granulomatous, what are the causes of granulomatous uveitis, we can differentiate this. These are the features of it. Then the differences between the sympathetic ophthalmitis and Vox-Koenige-Heraday disease, important part. Age is no, that is in the all ages sympathetic ophthalmitis, Vox-Koenige-Heraday syndrome, that is 20-50. Trauma, yes, penetrating trauma, there will be a history of trauma in sympathetic ophthalmitis, while not in that Heraday disease. Skin changes important, that is in poliosis, alopecia and the vitiligo part. These are the involved in Heraday disease. And the CNS findings are uncommon in sympathetic ophthalmitis, while common in Heraday disease. That is the deafness or the cutaneous injury, nerve injury or like that. Now findings are there. So that all the posterior segments, this is the choriocapillary involvement usually absent, they can be seen in that part. CSF finding usually normal, no in sympathetic ophthalmitis, by the pleocytosis in that part. It means we can differentiate the sympathetic ophthalmitis with the Heraday disease. Common feature granulomas are there in the both sides. Exudative detachment is both sides, but certain features like there will be a history of injury in sympathetic ophthalmitis, while there will be no. CNS part is involved in Weaker's disease, that is not. Vitiligo and this part, skin part is involved and this is involved, while not in sympathetic ophthalmitis, in typical part. That's how we can differentiate this sympathetic ophthalmitis with the Heraday disease act. So the last part of this one, once we have diagnosed, suppose the injury is there, of course we have to meticulously that repair part. Suppose the iris is a prolapse on other part, we excise that part and meticulously repair these things so the structures are maintained. That is the important part. And with this we start this role of enucleation. One is the term enucleation. Enucleation is previously what thought that if you remove that inciting eye, that will prevent. Now this theory or this thinking is not very good, because nobody will like to allow to enucleate the eye. You treat that nowadays. There are so many other structures. These are treatment part of this one. So we are not going to enucleate the eye. We are giving a treatment. Regress progress is part of the treatment. The role of enucleation of the inciting eye conventionally said prevent the sympathetic ophthalmitis if 2 weeks, because the incubation period is 2 months to 1 year. No? So within 2 months, if you remove that, so there will be less chances of this. It was thought that. Controversially, whether enucleation is a benefit once the CMS SO is developed that. This is opposed also. Pharmacological therapy of this. Current part. Corticosteroids, oral or periocular, intraocular, topical part. Important is treatment you immediately start. Once the eye is injured and the dangerous area, in that eye you start first meticulous repair of these. Every structure they are meticulously repaired part. One, then because the uvule pigment might have liberated, there is the anterior reduction can occur later on. So you start immediately the steroids, topical steroids or injectable part or the intravenous part. This is must, just to prevent that. Because if you are treating this part inciting eye, so there are less chances of the sympathetic ophthalmitis. So start steroids either topically or intravenously or subcutaneously, that part. Steroid sparing agents many times, because it's a dangerous one. So we are start, if the steroids are not responding, these features are still there, flare and that part and the pain or ciliary tenderness, then we can switch on immunosuppressive drugs. These are especially this immunosuppressive drugs, azithromycin, this is azithromycin or cyclophosphamide or cyclosporin A. We can start this, because these are the, because just we want to suppress your immune reaction. That is the theory. Immune, when the melanin pigment or the iris pigment comes and that is liberated, the antigenic part going there, and that reaction that is the occurring. So we want to suppress that. Start the steroids, or the steroids are not functioning or not responding, then you start immunosuppressive drugs also. That is the azithromycin or this other part of this. So cyclosporin A also. Prophylactic steroids do not prevent the sympathetic uveitis, but it can improve the visual outcome and can alter the histopathological feature. So the pathologic prophylactically, if you start, suppose there is no uveitis in the injured eye, or you have suppressed, you have started the steroid, it is not 100% sure that this is not, this eye, other eye is not going to develop this, but complications are less than. We can treat that part also. This is not the dangerous part. So you start this, but that is not a guarantee of this part, but we are starting that. So the once the case comes, you have to start. That is why we always, whenever there is a iris trauma, uvule pigment comes, starting the steroid part, topical or intravenous part of it. So we have to start this. The prognosis part, the relapsing nature of sympathetic ophthalmitis, and the potential toxicity of the treatment modalities was a careful long-term follow-up of this one. Spontaneous part. Steroids and immunosuppressive drugs technique we can give. So this advancement in microsurgery techniques for wound repair have improved the prognosis of S. That is why I told you there is a meticulous surgery. The advanced treatment, advanced surgery of these vitreoretinal surgery, suppose the choroid or other part, we have meticulously paired or we have started, then there are less chances, this is improved, that there are no chance of sympathetic ophthalmitis. So surgical advancement plus steroids or the immunosuppressive drugs, that have prevented the sympathetic ophthalmitis developing in other eyes. Nowadays, the advancement of the treatment. 50% of the patient achieving a final visual acuity 20 to 40 or the better in the last one eye. Cataract, secondary glaucoma and chronic maculopathy are the major cause of visual loss. Same thing as we have seen in iridocyclitis also. These are the complications of this one. Cataract, because it disturbs that part of the uveal tissue, that is going to secondary cataract or the complicated cataract. Glaucoma also, trabecular mesperk is involved, fibrosis of this one. and ocular maculopathy, optic neuritis on that part. These are the some part of this. So we have to start immediately the treatment part of this one. That finishes your this sympathetic ophthalmitis part. So just to in nutshell, we have to diagnose first. Suppose there is a ocular injury or the trauma in the dangerous part, UVL tissue has come out. So we'll think of there is a melanin pigmentation of the UVL tissue might have come or they have come in the systemic circulation. And in 2 months, in the 2 weeks or months, it will start the anaphylactic reaction. That so we have to examine first the inciting eye, whether there is a iris trauma. This is iritis part, means aqueous cells, the flare that. Immediately start this treatment part of it. It will prevent that. If after 2 months, suppose we have prevented this, after 2 months or 3 months, suppose the sympathetic other eye involves that. Earlier sign accommodation, the aqueous cells and the flares that is seen that, then we have to start the treatment of the steroids also, or the cycloplegic drugs, atropine, and the immunosuppressive drugs also. We are not advocating the enucleation of the inciting eye, because this is not a surgical procedure, that is not. Treat that part. If that develops the sympathetic ophthalmitis, that is also treatable part. The steroids and other things, the reticular surgery, that has prevented or decreased the incidence of the sympathetic ophthalmitis. So that finishes your all ocular injuries of this one, because the sympathetic ophthalmitis, many times in the theory part, you can ask the right short note on the sympathetic ophthalmitis. So you have to write all these things, features, the granulomatous, choroid features, the anti-segment features, complication, and the sign symptoms, and the treatment, and the prophylactic treatment. The next time I will be starting the proptosis and the orbit part.